Professor Jeffrey Herf, thank you for coming to UNC Chapel Hill today. You are an expert on German history, European history. You've just completed a book about the relations between East Germany and Israel. What is the essence of your findings?
The essence of the findings is that the East German government pursued a policy of hostility to the State of Israel because it was part of the Soviet bloc, and the Soviet Union was, for reasons of superpower competition, attempting to expand its influence in the Middle East. Because the East German government saw its hostility to Israel as a useful tool to expand its diplomatic relations with countries of the Middle East and in the Third World, and also as a matter of communist conviction that Zionism was an illegitimate foundation for the State of Israel, and on the basis of these basic political assumptions, East Germany joined in the Soviet bloc's efforts to offer military training, weapons, and financing of the Arab states and the Palestinian terrorist organizations of the 60s to the 80s, that this was a policy pursued with passion and enthusiasm, and it was more important for the events in the Middle East than the much more widely reported actions of the West German leftist terrorist organizations at the time.
Thank you. And it also differentiated the East German government from the policy of West Germany. I think that must have been important as well.
The West German government was, beginning in the early 1950s, a supporter of the State of Israel, and in 1965 the West German government established diplomatic relations with the State of Israel. When the West German government established diplomatic relations, all of the Arab states broke off diplomatic relations with West Germany and restored them at some point in the early 70s. But the East German government had the reputation in the Arab world as being the German state that was not supporting Israel, the German state that was supporting the Arabs and supporting the Palestinian organizations. And so its policy was diametrically opposed to that of what was called the Federal Republic of Germany.
Thank you. And did the pro-Israeli, anti-Israeli, pro-Palestinian position of East Germany really make a difference?
Well, it made a difference in several ways. It was important for East Germany's diplomatic success beginning in 1969 in gaining diplomatic recognition from all of the Arab states and then from other states around the Third World, so that East Germany became a fairly popular member of the United Nations. And it made a difference in the Middle East because the Soviet bloc, of which East Germany was a small member, became the primary weapons supplier, military trainer of the military institutions of the Arab states and the Palestinian organizations. So in that sense, yes, it was consequential.
Thank you. Moving on towards the post-Cold War years, East Germany, of course, has disappeared, has merged with West Germany. Some would say has been taken over by West Germany. Now we have United Germany. What is United Germany's position to Israel? Relations have been more difficult than they were during the Cold War years.
Well, there is a core political tradition that emerged in West Germany in the early 1950s and then has persisted in the policy of unified Germany. And that tradition was expressed by Chancellor Angela Merkel in an important speech that she gave in the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, I believe in 2008. I may have the date, I'm not sure about the date, it was something around that time, in which she said that the survival of Israel was a matter of Germany's reason of state. So I think that there is at one level, Germany's position regarding the legitimacy and the survival of the State of Israel is noteworthy in Europe, and Germany has played a very important role over the years in making the case for Israel, even at times when it is quite unpopular to do so. On the other hand, the German government has been very explicit about its criticisms of Israel's policies in the West Bank and its settlement policies, and has not been reticent about expressing its criticisms in that regard. So I would it's a mixed bag. The cultural, intellectual, and political exchange between Germany and Israel, if anything, is as intense as that between the United States and Israel.
So would you say that the Germans are following the EU line, or are the Germans having a slightly different policy to what most countries within the EU and the EU Commission pursues?
I'm not sure. I think the Germans often have a kind of braking function within the EU. Some of the hostility to Israel is greater than in other countries. I think it's important to keep in mind that Germany's fundamental foreign policy in the world as a whole is one that shies away from military intervention, that it places overwhelming emphasis on dialogue, discussion, and that the political culture of Germany is very much different than that of Israel, which finds itself in a very, very dangerous neighborhood. I mean, that said, it should also be remembered that several years ago, the German government gave several nuclear-armed submarines to Israel in order to strengthen Israel's deterrent capability. So
There wouldn't have been nuclear.
No, there wouldn't be nuclear. No, I'm sorry. That is an error. But submarines with missile capabilities, at any rate, of non-nuclear nature. I think the German government is probably more friendly to Israel than many other governments in the EU.
For historical reasons?
For historical reasons, yes. And that tradition, the tradition of what the Germans call Vergangenheitsbewältigung, or coming to terms with the German past, is one that really so far every German national leader has continued to promote, including Chancellor Merkel.
Traditionally, of course, the United States is also a highly pro-Israeli country and supports Israeli almost as much as no other country in the world. Still, recently relations have been more difficult, more complex. How do you explain that American policy has perhaps shifted regarding Israel?
Well, the Obama administration came into office with an interpretation of the Middle East conflict that if Israel would take a fundamentally different position towards the Palestinians, that the conflict could be ameliorated, there's been a significant difference of opinion, most sharply, obviously, between President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu, but across the Israeli political spectrum, there is a nervousness that the United States doesn't fully appreciate the unwillingness of the Palestinians the Palestinian leadership to reach a compromise settlement. It's the fault for the decline in relations, I think, lies as much in the White House as it does in Jerusalem.
So you believe that Obama's so-called Asian pivot, which the Europeans say has led to disengagement of the United States from Europe, at least to some extent, that had the same sort of effects regarding Israel and the Middle East?
Israel will, as any ally, will be more willing to take chances the more involved the United States is in the region. As the United States, rightly or wrongly, is perceived as retreating from the region, as reducing its commitment to the region, the more nervous the Israelis will feel about being left alone in what is now not only a dangerous but a completely chaotic region. So Obama spoke about not about allowing some daylight between Israel and the United States in the hopes that would pressure the Israeli government into pursuing a different policy. But the things psychologically, I think, work out in just the reverse. That is, the more reassured the Israelis are that the United States is there for the long term, the more willing they are to take risks for peace. And the fact that well, I could go on, but the fact that Israel left the Gaza Strip and then Hamas took over, and then Hamas launched several wars against Israel, that makes the Israeli public all the more nervous about taking more risks for peace. So it's, and I think people in the White House understand that. I think sometimes the clash of personalities between Obama and Netanyahu can overshadow the depth of the enduring connections between the United States and Israel.
Thank you. And the two-state solution, the so-called two-state solution, is that still the solution to be pursued?
Well, yes. I mean, there is no other realistic option that I can perceive. The question is, what kind of state would a Palestinian state be? And here, the experience in Gaza overshadows the whole discussion, because if there is a Palestinian state, and if it is taken over by Hamas or something like that, then Israel's major cities are simply 12 or 15 miles away from organizations that would be willing to, attack them, and that's not acceptable. So, in order to bring about a two-state solution, which I would like to see, the United States in the years to come should, in my view, accentuate its commitment to remaining a power in the Middle East. I think it is. We do have vital interests there, and that however important the Asia is, especially in terms of the world economy, I think that a two-state solution is possible, but not if the United States is perceived as diminishing its influence in the region.
So the United States still has to bang heads together, is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily bang heads together, but to, no, I think the Arab rejectionist organizations need to be convinced that Israel is there to stay, that a policy of delay in the hopes that eventually the political structure in Israel will collapse, that this is a failed policy, and that everybody has an enormous amount to gain by the establishment of a stable, democratic Palestinian state that is not a revanchist state, that is not dreaming of going back to Tel Aviv, and that kind of thing. So, given the Syrian civil war, given Hezbollah, Hamas, I mean, you can understand the Israelis are nervous about the neighborhood that they're living in, and when you're nervous about the neighborhood you're living in, you want to know that the police are close by in case things turn for the worst. So. Your questions are excellent. I guess I'm repeating myself a bit here, but I think that in order to bring about a compromise, in order to bring about stability, the United States needs to reassure Israel, and by the way, our Arab allies, that we are in the region to stay. There is a sense in the United States, which is understandable after the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, that the region is simply hopeless, that there's nothing that any outside power can do to fix this, and that the Arabs or the Persians will simply have to figure this out for themselves. But that leaves a vacuum, and into the vacuum steps Russia and Iran, and I don't think that the ascendancy of Russia and Iran in the region is going to be a formula for stability. Not to mention democracy, which certainly is not going to emerge from their increased influence.
Thank you. Professor Jeffrey Herf, thank you very much for your insights. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.